welcome everybody. We are live. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna have a really good programmers. In the words of what's his name, really big shoe. I can't. Ed Sullivan. That was it. That was way back, David. So listen, David Towell's joining me. I am going to do Q&A. I've been promising you all that for a week, but we're going to talk about Israel. So we're going to direct the Q&A kind of that way. I will answer some of the other questions that we already have turned in, plus some that are your questions you send in right now. David, how are you?
Actually, I'm kind of smiling. I don't know if it's okay to smile about what's going on in Lebanon right now, but I am kind of smiling. I'm okay. Everything's getting organized. Kind of things are settling here. I'm becoming more and more American. So, yep, everything's going fine.
So I think people need to know you're actually in Los Angeles right now. I'm leaving to Israel, like in less than 2 weeks now. I'll be there. I'm excited about it.
I might surprise you. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, that would be great. I'm recording a whole lot of videos over there, and I'm noticing some of the airlines are opening back up. Ours never got canceled, so we look like
some of them are closing up though, and that's maybe part of what's going on.
Yeah, well, some have also opened up, which is kind of weird. So, but I'm excited. My flight's still open, and I can't wait to go there. I'm looking forward to seeing some people, some of our friends. If you surprise me, that would be great. I got lots of things I could ask you about while we're there. Okay.
Okay.
And I got things to ask you about here. So yesterday I made a joke about the exploding pagers. And then you said it's not a laughing matter. Then you made two jokes right after that with Avi Beeper and Ellie Copter. So anyways, but I look at the news today, and what do we have? We have, David, we have walkie-talkies have now been blowing up. I have report 2 solar panels have blown up. I'm looking at everything going on, and there was I guess a cell phone, a pager that blew up while at the funeral service for a person who was blown up by a pager.
Well, we think it's the walkie-talkies now that are blowing up. I mean, we're how do you say, blowing up electronics 2.0. There you go.
2.0.
Okay, what's the name of the movie? I mean, Boom Boom version 2.
Version 2. Okay, so I got a lot to ask you. So Israel, how far we talked a little bit yesterday about Israel not needing to always be on the defensive, but being on the offensive, but at the same time, they can't necessarily be the initiator. But I mean, I look at everything. They're constantly being threatened. So in my mind, how could Israel ever actually be the initiator when your life is threatened every single day? Has been since 1948.
Maybe just to go back to what we talked about yesterday, when Israel succeeds, it usually succeeds because it takes the initiative. When we lay back and sit under the way the Bible says our grapevine and our fig tree, that's when we get smacked. And basically, I think Israel has realized that we need to take the initiative. The problem is we've got a whole lot of chains tied to our legs and arms and feet and whatever that are basically holding us back because the world is afraid of something bigger happening in the Middle East. And as a result of that, the United States is afraid of that. The administration is afraid of that. And they're trying to say, well, we don't want too much wave. So we are in a tit for tat kind of situation. Leave it at the tit for tat. Don't make too much waves, accept the situation. And we'll see what's going to happen next. And I think Israel's coming to a point where we can't wait. Though there is a very interesting story about why this, for lack of a word, attack of the pager people, took place now and not at a different time. And I've gotten a little bit of kind of info on that, which is kind of interesting because we talked yesterday about the fact that why did they do it now?
Mm-hmm. So
And
you going to share that with us, or are you just going to leave us all hanging?
yeah, well, I'm going to hang you a little bit more
Okay.
because what seemed logical to me yesterday is that if you have this capability, use it as part of something more. And I think we even asked yesterday, is this the opening shot of the big war that everybody's talking about between Israel and Hezbollah in the north? Because it makes sense that this would be. And it seems, at least from some of the sources that I've gotten connected to, is that this was planned to be the opening shot. Israel put this. I don't know if Israel did this. We're not sure. I mean, I need a disclaimer here. Okay, Israel. Okay, or whoever put it together, but whoever put this together basically had the capability, has had the capability for weeks, if not months. Okay, in place, and I thought it would be used as part of an all-out war. It turns out that that was the original plan. And the original plan was to have this capability. So if the all-out hostilities breaks between us and the Hezbollah in the north, the first thing they would do would press this button and scramble up all the communications and all. I mean, this is more than just an attack on the people. This is an attack on the communication center of the enemy. This is an attack on the way they kind of pass messages. I was trained as a tank commander that if you see 5 tanks in your scope and one tank has a bigger antenna, meaning it's a communication center, that's the one you hit first. Okay, so basically this is Israel hitting their communications, but I think what I heard make sense is that Israel had this in place, but they found out about it. And there were 2 Hezbollah operatives, people, whatever you want to call, that found out or felt that or thought that this was happening, and they were going to blow the whistle. One of them was assassinated, but Israel decided not to take a chance and pressed, well, I don't know, again, Israel, whoever, somewhere, somebody pressed the button, and this kind of burst out. So that is my answer, more or less, or what seems plausible to why it was done now. Because if you've got that capability, why you use it? If you got that capability and the enemy doesn't know you have it, then you use it when you've got the most impact. And yesterday wasn't the day with the most impact. It would have been on some other. So that's that reason. And then I don't know how to explain it. I mean, if you've got that kind of situation and you're going to the funeral of somebody that was killed in the explosion of his pager, do you really take your communication device with you? Do you really hold it up to your ear to hear if somebody's talking to you? And it turns out that they did, and another 14 were killed today, according to Lebanese sources, and more than 200 were wounded using these communication devices. I don't think they're cell phones. I think they're like walkie-talkies kind of things. And here's the weird one, and this is connected to something that I think is a little bit deeper. This type of walkie-talkie is really, really intensively used by the Republican Guard in Iran.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting because more than anything, this is as much a message to Israel's enemies around the world. This is a way for Israel to get to you. And that connects to something I think that's kind of cool.
Okay, so you said it connects to something that you think is kind of cool. I'd like to hear what that is. By the way, John Howler says hi.
Hi.
I got off the phone with him just a minute ago. I was supposed to say hi from Olivier yesterday, but you were just on his program, so I don't have to do that now. So as I look at things, okay, this sends a very profound message to the Iranian Republican Guard or whatever.
That was an interesting slip up.
Yeah, it was. So as you look at it, I mean, the message that's being set is, to me, it's like, okay, what do you do with your laptop at that point if you're involved in this? What do the leaders do? All of them know that they are being watched. They know that they can be taken anytime. I mean, it's got to put everybody on alert. What else is rigged? Is my TV at home rigged? Is my everything? I mean, how do you not live in fear from this point if you're one of these terrorists?
So what I was, thinking that the scariest thing that a Hezbollah operative, and I'm going to call them terrorists. By the way, Hezbollah is considered, let's make this clear. Start off from the beginning. Hezbollah is considered a terrorist organization by the United States, Europe, and the rest of the world. It is a terrorist organization. The scariest thing, I think, in the mind of a Hezbollah terrorist right now is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd be afraid to do this if I am part of the Hezbollah organization today. And in extension, if I'm somebody in Yemen that is firing rockets at Israel, or in extension, if I'm part of the Republican Guard, okay, all of them would be worried about this. And I called it terror. I mean, we are actually terrorizing the enemy. Olivia actually corrected me and said, it's not terror, it's psychological warfare. And I think this is the ultimate psychological warfare. And remember, we talked about the tit for tat. I mean, armor and guns or tanks and missiles. You get this tit for tat. In the war where technology is the main player, okay? We had been losing. We lost the tech. We were using or depending on technology to defend us from the Hezbollah, and the Hezbollah actually untechnologized us. I mean, we thought we'd put a technological fence with sensors and guns and everything, and what they did is drove a tractor through the fence. Okay, with Iran or the Hezbollah, we thought that we had a strong army and we could always go in, but the use of missiles has actually derailed or made a featherweight into a heavy hitter. We connected to that. What Israel did now is actually brought the technology back online and say, okay, we got this. We understand you want to use, but we also can use technology in new ways, in ways that you never thought of and you never dreamed of. And I think more than anything, this is going to put all of Israel's enemies on the back foot. Hopefully.
I would say so. Let me ask you about Gideon. You have the story of Gideon in the book of Judges. The enemy, obviously, Israel makes all kinds of noise. The people with Gideon did. He didn't have a large army. Interesting also how throughout Israel's history, they were always the smaller army, always outnumbered by when it comes to manpower. But I've had several people liken what's happening in the last 48 hours to the time of Gideon. John Haller did on a phone call just before we came on. Craig, who did. I've had several other people mention it. I mean, I've been in Israel with you on these trips. We've talked about Gideon and other judges. You have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love Gideon. I love Gideon because Gideon probably read the book of Proverbs. And if you've got a Bible, hit Proverbs, I think 24 verse 6 or 24 verse 5. That literally says this. And I brought it up on the screen before. A wise man is strong. Yes, a man of knowledge increases strength, for by wise counsel you will wage your own war. That's what Israel did. That's what Gideon did. Gideon actually, when he decided to take on the Midianites, put a torch inside a jar, a ceramic jar, a vase, and that way you couldn't see it. And when they got close enough to the enemy, they kind of got in really, really close to the enemy. They broke the jars, they blew the shofar, and they didn't even have a sword in their hands. And what happened is that the enemy kind of freaked out and killed one another, and that's how Gideon won the war. I really like Gideon. And I don't know if I ever told you the story in Israel about a man named Ord Wingate who took the story of Gideon and turned it into the story of the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF. In a quick one, Ord Wingate was a British colonel who was brought to teach. He took the story of Gideon and he taught us always to take the war to the enemy, never to wait for the enemy to come to you. And he taught us to fight. He also taught us that you always lead your men into war. You never send your men into war. And he was considered a great friend of ours. When the British realized how close he was to us, they shipped him out. He was part of the Battle of Burma in World War II. So if you want to check out a born-again Christian who makes a difference, Ord Wingate. But one of the things that he taught us is you have to trick your enemy. You have to make your enemy what we call shock and awe tactics. And I think, again, Proverbs, Gideon, Ord Wingate, and Israel has always won the battles that we preempted. Think about 56 war, thinks about 62 war, 67 war, excuse me. When we actually go on the warpath, that's when we are most successful. When we wait for the enemy's going to surprise us, that's when we have a problem.
Very fascinating. So I look at this, unexpected, what's been happening. Wasn't on anybody's radar I know of. Obviously, it was on some people's radar because this was developed and it was a plan. And as you said, it sounds like it was a plan to be implemented a little bit later, not right now, but it appears it was found out, so it had to be implemented now. It would make me wonder what else is up Israel's sleeve that we don't even know about yet, because I never would have thought about that. And I mean, there's some people now that say, well, yeah, that would work, and they'll tell me why, the tech reasons why, but it hasn't been employed before. It's all so fascinating. It makes you wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. What will be Israel's next move? I mean, I personally would think that Iran would be very concerned about making a move right now because they don't know what else could be planted or already planned.
So what's been happening in the last couple of weeks with the taking out of Mohammed Dif in Gaza and the taking out of Sukul in Beirut and the taking out of Ismail Haniya in Tehran, Israel is actually indicating we have you infiltrated, either technologically or intelligence-wise. And I think we said this yesterday. I'm very proud that I'm part of a military country culture who fights its war in a very moral kind of way. So these are moral attacks, the way I would call it. I mean, when you take out the enemy commander, okay, there's a morality in this that is different from just firing a rocket into a civilian population center. So I think that's kind of fascinating. What is next? What I'm trying to say is the last time Iran tried to attack an Israeli facility, Israel mixed up the coding and the supervising software for one of the main container harbors in Iran. I mean, if you've ever seen a harbor, a port, you see all the loads of containers. The which container is where is a very, very complex dance. The truck brings it from there. It comes off the ship. What Israel did is it scrambled that software in one of the main ports in Iran. It took them weeks to figure out where the containers are. And if Israel can do that, then think what else we can do. Mm-hmm. And what Israel has been doing lately is finding different ways, because again, in this political situation, our hands are tied behind our back. We can't just blow up Beirut. We can't just blow up the Dakhia. We can't just blow up villages where we know there are missiles aimed at us from Lebanon. We can't. And again, look what's happening in Gaza. We can't just go in and destroy everything in Gaza. So we have to find different ways to deal with these threats. And I think what Israel is proving that what the enemy doesn't know is what it should be fearing more than anything else. And hopefully they're getting the idea What that means and what's going to be the next one, I'm not sure. But do you understand if Israel has infiltrated their organization at that level, then everything's up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big fear would just be that is what's going to happen next. We don't know. I mean, this totally puts them back on their heels. I have several questions that have come in. Can I ask you some of them?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Here's one of them is, do you think Israel will officially declare war now?
No. I mean, again, if they had wanted to, if Israel had wanted to, we would have done it. I think Israel is still waiting, and the question is for what? My guess is for your elections, for lack of anything else, or to see what the situation is going to be in the Middle East after November. So I think everything's on hold until that happens, because the Middle East will look different, very, very different under a Kamala Harris administration than it will under a Donald Trump administration. And nobody's willing to kind of put all of the pieces on the board until we know if we're playing backgammon or we're playing chess, if for lack of a better word.
That makes a lot of sense. I heard that Israel started moving tanks up north today. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, that is part of what was going on, because now, again, one of the things we need to understand that we live in a very, very bad neighborhood. And what happened to Hezbollah with Shukul? I don't know, the assassination. By the way, he was taken out by a missile that was literally aimed at his cell phone. Okay. So the missile kind of searched for the cell phone and went through the window to find the cell phone. The attack that they tried, I don't know if you remember, they tried the retaliatory attack, and Israel actually preempted them and blew up most of the long-range missiles. So all they had to do was fire the short or the medium-range missiles. They killed a lot of chickens, but basically no more than that. And this event have put Iran, more than anything, and people don't really realize the importance of this in the Middle East, have turned them into a joke. Hassan Nasrallah was the flag bearer of the resistance against the Western world, against Israel, against the United States. Iran is saying, look, we don't have the technologies, but look what we're able to do. And this is putting Hassan Nasrallah really in the joke category. And the memes coming out of the Arab world are, I mean, just YouTube it, and the fun. I mean, the Arabs are making fun. Now, if a young Muslim growing up anywhere in the Arab world wanted to be Hassan Nasrallah, wanted to be Hezbollah, okay, wanted to see this as a role model, now I think he sees it in a different way. And in a weird way, I think that is as important as how many Hezbollah operatives were actually taken out. And I think that is part of the change that's going to be taking place, which means that now Hezbollah has to retaliate. Iran has to retaliate as much for pride and face reasons than for actually political or military reasons. That's why the tanks are moving up.
Very interesting. So I have a question here from Cash Devers, which I'll get to in just a second. But I want to let everybody know I will be in Wisconsin with Don Perkins this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Calvary Chapel Solid Rock in New Richmond, Wisconsin. So check it out on the website. I'd love to meet y'all there. For anybody who was within the distance to drive there, be great to see you all. Lots to talk about. Be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this coming weekend. Okay, so Cash Deaver says, will the IDF push all the way to the Litani River?
If we go in, yes. There's a major difference between long-range missiles that are directed into downtown Tel Aviv and medium or short-range missiles and mortars that are directed at the north. What is keeping Israel's population away from their houses in the north are the medium waves. I mean, Hezbollah has missiles that can reach all the way to Modi'in. That's the middle of the country where my mom lives. But we can't, we don't evacuate people out of the country because of that. And if they do fire that, that changes the whole. So the only reason that they can play this tit for tat game is that they have enough people.
I sleep at night on a mattress. So I sleep.
It's the best celebration.
I don't know what that was.
Everybody knows it's live.
And the reason that they can play this tit for tat that is keeping all the Israeli population away from the north is the medium range rockets. The 20 kilometers, 10, 20 kilometer rockets. I mean, the 10, 15 mile rockets that are keeping this. Because if you go more than 10, 15 miles, you're covering the whole country. You can't evacuate the whole country. The Litani River is a geographical barrier that puts them away from that 20 miles. So if Israel does go in, it'll go in far enough to push them away from the Litani River. And then it'll say, wait a minute, that takes away your ability to fire the medium range. If you want to fire long range at us, that's already a different kind of war. That's a different kind of game. And that'll allow us to take out infrastructure. But here we're going back to the problem that we have with the Houthis. I don't know if you remember a couple of days ago, it's like we've forgotten.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Houthis fired a long-range missile that put my mom in the bomb shelter in Modi'in. One missile. And because the footprint is big enough, half of Israel went into to bomb shelters. Now, if they can do that, then they're holding Israel hostage, basically. So Israel needs to retaliate. The thing is that the day after they fired the missile, they started publishing on their websites how the humanitarian crisis in Yemen will get worse if Israel actually retaliates. Meaning, it's the classic bully kind of effect. We strong, we will hit you, we can hit you. And then when you look at them sharply and say, I'm going to hit you back if you hit me, said, no, don't hit me back because I'm small, I'm weak, and I'm a nothing. And they're using the humanitarian crisis as a shield for Israel not to attack them back, not to reply. So they're saying, we can hit you whenever we want, but if you want to hit us back, we're going to cry humanitarian crisis. And then it's not that we care about our people, because if we cared about our people, we wouldn't have shot in the first hand. We actually want you, Americans, Europeans, Western people, to guard us from Israel. And we do that by crying humanitarian crisis. We're weak. We're nothing. Children will die if you retaliate against us. That is the tactic that is being used now. And I'm going to say this, we're going to have to be careful because the world or the enemies of the Western world are going to pick up on this tactic. And it's just a matter of time before somebody else uses them. I mean, what are you going to do if Colombia tomorrow says, we want you to pay for rebuilding our economy after the drug lords destroyed everything in Colombia? If you don't, we're going to fire rockets at Panama Canal. Now, I don't know if you know, but if Panama Canal is under threat, 30% of the traffic between Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere, I think 30% or more is cut off. If we allow Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran to play this game, it's only a matter of time before somebody else kind of gets into the idea and says, yeah, I mean, we're going to do this from Colombia or from Venezuela. I mean, look what's going on in Venezuela. And if you want to retaliate against us, we're going to hold up the victim flag and say, we're poor people and you can't retaliate against us. And you get this tick for tack. I think this is a much, much bigger problem on the world stage than just the problem between Israel and Hezbollah. And the fact that Iran is buying up technology from the Russians, the only player that could contrast, fight against Israel on this technological level would be Russia. And I think what we're seeing is a getting closer between Russia and Iran, also on this kind of technological level. And I think I'm on a channel called Hope for Our Times that specializes in biblical prophecy. I think that makes so much sense.
So I'm going to get to that in just a second. I got to get to a couple of things. I've had questions. A Trio asks, will this affect the normalization agreements with Saudi Arabia? As several people talked about the Abraham Accords, what do you think is going to happen? I have several different questions that have come in that I need to get to. But first of all, I got to ask you this because people are asking. There's a wood plaque behind you, and people want to know what if you'll hold it up and tell them what it says.
This?
Yes.
Well, you all know the Aaronic blessing.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, very cool.
It's olive wood with the Aaronic blessing. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom.
Amen. And in English, may the Lord bless thee and keep thee and make his face to shine upon thee and give thee peace. May his countenance be upon thee. I can't remember the exact words in English, but I believe it's very close to that.
And then above that is my baby that I miss a lot, but haven't seen that for a while.
That's your tank, so if people can't see it, that's his tank baby. All right, I'm going to do the Ezekiel 38 thing real quick, and then I want to ask you about the normalization agreements, but there are several questions that have come in. With everything I see taking place, folks, if you heard me for a while, you know that I do not believe Ezekiel 38 can happen right now, today. And the reason I don't believe it can happen today is because in Ezekiel 38, Israel's dwelling in peace and safety, a land without walls, and so forth. And we don't see Israel dwelling in this peaceable state where King James says specifically these peaceful people. They're not there. And the Hebrew word for that in verse 11 of Ezekiel 38 gives us our English term tranquil, a tranquil state. Israel's definitely not there. However, I wholeheartedly believe everything that we see taking place is eventually going to lead to that. I've been reading that Russia will align itself with Iran. We know that biblically, but I'm reading, they're saying, no, we definitely will. If there's a war, we'll side ourselves with Iran, but we aren't sure how much yet. I have felt for quite some time that Israel will not go head-to-head, Iran will not go head-to-head against Israel in a battle because Iran, I believe they know they aren't going to win in a head-to-head battle. And that's why they have all these different proxies that fight for them. But I do believe that Iran won't go a head-to-head battle until Russia is with them. And so I believe this is what I see is in the developing stage, but that battle won't happen until Israel is a peaceful people. I look forward to going to Israel. I have 2 trips that are coming up in 2025. Plus, I have a Footsteps of Paul trip coming up in March too, which is going to be really cool. Go to Greece, and we're going to Rome. We're going to do some of the islands, Patmos. That's going to be really cool too. But as I look at it, God's in control. David, I'm just never afraid to go to Israel. I know a war is going on, but over 30,000 people have made their aliyah because they feel safer in Israel during a war than they do in the Western world right now because of anti-Semitism. You see these dynamics that are taking place, 30,000 people this year alone with Jews going back to Israel. But Israel's not in the place of Ezekiel 38 yet. God is on the throne. Things are developing. You look like you want to say something to this.
I've been hearing more and more Jews talking about the similarity of the feelings between what's going on now in the world and what we felt before the Holocaust. I'm not saying the Holocaust is coming. I'm saying, though, that the Jews are feeling that, again, we are being singled out for special treatment from all kinds of places. And if you want the connection I think that we want to connect here is that more and more Jews are going to make their way to Israel. The worse it gets outside, the more Jews are going to make their way to Israel. But I heard one of the main differences between what's happening now and what's happening to Jewish populations in Europe before the Holocaust. The main difference is today there's an Israel, meaning they have a place to come. They have a refuge. They have in the Bible, we call these refuge cities, places that you can go and take refuge in. And I think that is going to be part of the dynamic that we're going to see as we go deeper and deeper into this. As far as the peace is concerned, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I mean, unless Israel pulls out all the stops and actually so totally smashes Iran and all of its proxies in some way, then I don't see peace here going on. And Israelis are more hunkering down right now and saying, okay, it looks like we're going to have to, the way we say it is, live on our sword. We've been living on our sword for 3 generations. It looks like the next generation is going to live on our sword. More than anything, this whole event and what's happening now has totally derailed the peace movement inside Israel. And Israel sees, I think, no way to make peace with the enemies. Now, what's going to happen with Saudi Arabia, how that's going to play out is a whole new kind of dynamic. And I mean, if we want to play mind games, let's think President Trump gets into office, pulls out all the stops, tries to create a peace movement between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and everything that comes. And maybe Israel's not going to be in peace with the whole Middle East, but it's going to be at peace with enough of the Middle East to be able to sit back down and say, we don't have to live on our sword anymore. That would be something that we could talk about.
Because that could change the dynamic in a second. Okay, I want to ask you about the political problems going on in Israel, because that's very real. We have the issue with Ben Gvir. We have him saying we need to build a synagogue on the Temple Mount or something like that. You have that, plus you have this whole movement from the left that is just it's anti-Israel. I mean, and this I would say from an American perspective, that's what it appears to me. The problem, where do you see? I mean, this problem has to be resolved. It's a huge problem because it's internal that you have there.
Let's start off. The internal problems are internal problems, and most Israelis, and I've been listening to Chaviv Gur lately, most Israelis agree on most of the situation. You've got Israelis on both sides. They're saying, wait a minute, maybe yes, maybe no. But a classic example that I would give, I'm not a great lover of Bibi Netanyahu. But even I agree with most of his policies. I don't agree with all of them, and I have a problem with what's going on his far right. I have a problem with what's going on with the far left. But most of us would agree with most of the problems. So the whole problem with Gantz and other players in Israel is something else. And again, I think you've heard me say this before. Our enemy interprets our lack of unity as more of a problem than it actually is. Okay, let's not forget, we're Jewish. I mean, go back to Exodus and hear how we used to argue with each other and how that, in the end, reality is going to smack us in the face is what I think more than anything else. So for all of those who are hoping to see Israel fall apart because of its internal problems, I doubt that will happen. We're going probably to some kind of election, and the government will centralize itself in any election. But I don't see that happening in the near future. And what I'm going to say is the situation right now, from a political point of view, inside Israel is more or less stable because nobody wants to break up the government. Ben Gvir doesn't want to. Bibi doesn't want to. Nobody wants the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, are getting money that they wouldn't get in any other government. So nobody wants to break up the government. So I know it sounds like it's a lot of noise, but this government is probably going to be more stable for longer than any other government that we could have put together right now.
And I would think some of that has to do with the war, because the Israeli friends that I talk to, I think you know probably most of them. I get the sense that regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on right now, you're still Israeli, you're still a Jew, and therefore that is still coming first.
Yeah. They tried to kill us. They didn't kill us. Let's celebrate is something that we all have in common, no matter what side of the political fence you're on.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me because that's the way I see it. Okay, now with I have to answer. Let me answer a couple of these questions. Then I do want to ask you what you think is going to happen to the Houthis. Will Israel respond, or what they've done with the cell phones, the pagers, and the solar panels? Are they going to let that sit for a few days? You can think about that, but I got to answer a couple of questions. One of them is from Mark Matox. Says, does the parable of the fig tree refer to the rapture or Jesus' return? All these things refer not to the rapture, but to the second coming of Christ. So thank you for making that distinction, Mark, because the rapture is when we go up. The second coming of Christ is when he comes back. And that's at the end of the tribulation. So all the parables or all the prophecies regarding the second coming of Christ are about that. They are not about the rapture itself. So I hope that makes sense. Sherry Moody says, as I'm seeing what looks like a radical takeover of EU by Muslims, and we seem to see the same thing here in the U.S., is there a prophecy that points to this? Jesus said lawlessness will abound. In other words, it's going to grow greater and greater and greater. Listen, nationalism and globalism will never mix. We have these globalists that want to bring the Muslims here into the U.S., into Europe, and guess what? The French are still French, and they're tired of what they're seeing happen to their country. The Italians are still Italians. They're tired of seeing what's happening to their country. We see what's going on in the UK. In Germany, they're saying, forget it. Germany is actually going after these Muslims who are causing the problems. And they're dealing with them. So, and you have these really bad liberal leftist Marxist leaders who are telling everybody who's trying to stay up for their country, they're telling them, hey, you better keep your mouth shut or we're going to arrest you for hate speech. See things like that in the UK. There's too many people that are fed up with it. Nationalism, Mexicans are still Mexicans, right? Jews are still Jews. And this is what the globalists have to fight against as they're trying to change the world by pushing Muslims all over the place. But it's creating lawlessness. But there is no specific verse about Muslims being taken through open borders into other parts of the world. Okay, so those are a couple of questions I had to get to.
Okay, to tie maybe maybe a big question I've been thinking about lately. Ever since the end of World War II, and specifically after the fall of the Berlin Wall and everything, the policeman of the world has been the United States of America. And the United States of America has been spending trillions upon trillions in projecting enough power to keep international trade open, to keep lawlessness down to a minimum. I mean, when we whether you know anything about weapons of mass destruction, the United States of America went into Iraq twice because what was going on there was a crazy that was willing to blow up the whole situation in the Middle East. So the United States of America has been the world's policeman, but there's a feeling that the United States of America is tired of it, and there's a feeling that smaller players. I mean, look at what the Houthi did. I mean, look at what Iran is doing. I mean, if you go back to pre-World War II, a country like Iran wouldn't be able to play on the world stage. And now we've got all these different players, and I think the United States of America and the Western world is getting tired of it. Infiltration of Islam basically into that. And again, we might have a one world government that is more woke, progressive, let's not do anything, as much as anything else. All about, inclusiveness, all about there's no difference between my God and your God. There's no difference between men and women. this kind of mushy mush kind of everything is acceptable and nothing is problematic. That might be where we're going, and the Muslims and the woke coming together, which is so ludicrous. Okay,
Yeah.
The socialist and the Muslims coming together is so ludicrous, is indicative that the West has lost its spiritual, moral core, and anything can be poured into that vacuum. And we're getting poured in from the Muslim world, and we're getting poured in from the LGBTQ Dinabi Balagan world, okay? And all of that is coming in. That might be the mishmash that we are actually setting to. And I think that the United States and a lot of the people that are probably listening to us are saying, why do we have to fight wars in Yemen? Why do we have to go, and why do we have to fight wars in Israel? And I think that might be the backdrop of some of the things that we're talking about.
That makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people that I know that are really fed up with Ukraine and Russia war. We see billions upon billions upon billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars going into that. I mean, there's so many political things that we can bring up regarding that. And with Israel, I think with a lack, this is me, I think a lack of understanding the value of Israel in the Mideast to be the peacekeeper there is pretty profound, but people don't realize it that way. I had an opportunity to interview Yoram Ettinger several years ago. I think it's 2015, 16, something like that, while in Jerusalem, and he described, listen, Israel is it's the aircraft carrier that's here that is in the Mideast. And although the U.S. gives money to Israel for weapons and so forth, by the way, give money to Israel to buy the weapons, then Israel gives the money back to U.S. companies. It kind of shows a different light. Oh, why? The U.S. is winning on both.
It's a U.S. subsidy.
It is a U.S. subsidy, so the U.S. is actually making money off. They give them money, but they get the money back. So very interesting. But nevertheless, so you have, as he described it, so the U.S. puts money into Israel, but the value they get, the amount of money it would cost for the U.S. to station military there 24/7, which would be necessary, it would be way more money than the amount of money that is given to Israel. And yet with the Israel money, they still get it back by the
what
weapons.
I like to tell people is close your eyes for a minute and imagine Israel is not here. I mean, Israel doesn't exist. That the whole Middle East is covered by Muslims, and there's different kinds of Muslims, and the fighting between them. But the type of Islam that is becoming more and more prominent is the militant Sunni Shiite. We want to take over the world Islam, which was the basic ideology behind Islam. If Israel is not here, does Iran stop on the edge of the Middle East and not try to expand into Europe? Does Iran not use the rise of Muslims in the European nations and try to create a continuation through Turkey geographically into Europe? Does Iran and the more militant Muslims say, now we're good friends with the United States, we don't want the great Satan to disappear? No. I mean, Israel is right smack in the middle of this, where I know it sounds weird to say it, we're the lightning rod right now.
Yeah. That would be one way of putting it.
And it's not going to end with the destruction of Israel. So I think to a certain extent, the Western world has to be, and whether they say it or not. Okay, one of the classic examples is look at the Arab world. The leadership of the Arab world, Saudi Arabia is pro-Israel, though I would say most of the people living in Saudi Arabia are anti-Israel. Jordan has a peace agreement with Israel, but most of the Jordanians are people who come from Palestinian backgrounds. And that's a very different kind of understanding. The Muslims are out to get the Western world. It's time for people to wake up to that. The Muslims are against, the Muslim with their Muslim values are against everything that is Western with its Christian values. That's the war that we're fighting. It's not about the territory, and it's not even about Israel.
Indeed. As we look at Israel, and let me go back to the earlier question regarding the missiles, or the missile coming from the Houthis, I mean, I've been waiting for Israel to respond. Then, cell phones started blowing up, or pagers. But with that, where do you see this going? Because there's still a problem. There's still a problem in the Red Sea, which, it's like U.S. doesn't really seem to be doing anything about it, which takes me back to what you said earlier. The U.S. is kind of like, well, let's just all get along. We're not really going to get involved. They're certainly not putting fear in anybody's mind.
That missile that was actually launched out of Yemenite territory had to have gone over Saudi Arabia, had to have gone over Jordan. There are American assets in the Red Sea, there are actually American bases in Saudi Arabia. None of them picked up on it. By the way, yes, we are afraid that was the Houthi say it's a brand new kind of missile. And again, this tit for tat that we keep on talking about between offensive systems and defensive systems is still going on. But like I say, I believe Israel should be going on the offensive soon. I hope that they're going to take out that port that they only took out half of, and now they will take out the rest. But again, we're going to get blamed for, missiles again, rockets coming in again. We're going to get blamed for the humanitarian crisis that is going to be a result. Now, do you understand the mindset of the Houthi who are saying we don't care about our people? We don't care if they go starving. We don't care if they go hungry. It's more important for us as a government, as a culture, to fire this 1 or 2 rockets against Israel than it is to feed our people. And that's a different kind of war that we have to fight. And I think the West isn't ready for that kind of war yet. We'll see.
No, the West is not. By the way, everybody, David's going to be joining me at the End of the World Conference coming up in Temecula, California. James Cadiz going to be joining us. That's
amazing.
It's an amazing lineup. I think there's 15 speakers, along with Eric Stackelbeck, Jeff Morgan. I'm not sure if you've met Jeff Morgan yet. He's Israeli. He's become a good friend. I think you'll like him.
I think you're bringing in Dan Cohen.
Dan Cohen's going to be here. We have Brandon Holthouse. I'm trying to think of who else. It's a long list. It's a great list. So, yeah. And by the way, the net proceeds from the conference, the net proceeds are for Gihon Springs, which is really cool. People wonder, why are you charging for one thing, it's 3 days. The other thing, I had to fly people in from all over the world, literally, put them up in hotels. Costs a lot of money. But the proceeds, you want to go to something good. So the net proceeds are going to Gihon Springs, which is great. So it's going to be an outstanding conference. You can check it out, hopeourtimes.com. David, real quick, Gihon Springs, a little bit about it. You're connected with them, therefore, I'll let you talk.
The Bible says that Israel is the apple of God's eyes, and part of the basic core of the Calvary Chapel movement down through the years, Chuck Smith, was the connection to Israel. Different pastors, among them my late father-in-law, who actually believed in supporting Israel, who was the pastor of Calvary Chapel Downey, when he left his role at the church, decided to continue the mission to Israel and created an organization called Gihon Springs that was created before the war in order to support believing organizations inside, Christian organizations inside Israel. But the minute the war started, we had that mechanism in place to support the soldiers in Israel. So we are basically an added-on support resource for different military units in Israel. We're supplying drones and now backpacks and other things. And actually to show, and again, one of the things that I find fascinating is that these things touch the hearts of Israelis more than any kind of evangelistic handing out Bibles in Tel Aviv could ever. Because we're saying to Israel, we are behind you because we're Christians. Here is how Christians relate to Jews, as opposed to what we're seeing all over the rest of the world. And this is a massive ministry. So if you want to be a part of Gijón Springs, like you said, I want to say thank you for the proceeds of this event going to Gijón Springs, or hit the website. Gijón Springs is the spring of water that bubbles out underneath Mount Moriah, underneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and supplies water for the whole city of Jerusalem. That's where the name comes from.
That's so cool. That's great. By the way, Vindog's joined us in the chat. Vindog, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Vindog, I think he's going to join us. He's going to set up a table to meet people at the conference also. This is going to be cool. Great time. Check it out, everybody, again. By the way, I just released the Tom Hughes report today on the war on God. If you want to check that out, that is also on all of our platforms right now. I think you're going to like it. And it's a new program I started, David, probably about 3 months ago now. And but it's pretty cool.
How can I get my hands on it?
We'll send you the link. I'll have Craig or Matthew send you the link right now. I hope you like it. Well, I know it's really good. Anyways, but everybody, it's just been a great time with you today, David. Again, we have 2 trips coming to Israel in 2025 so far, and a Footsteps of Paul if you want to go to Greece and Rome with us. We're also going to go to Ephesus, hit the island of Patmos, where John received the word for the book of Revelation. It's going to be off the charts. Any of those, you can check them out at hopeforourtimes.com, and the conference coming up in Temecula, California. So all of those things. So there.
Amen.
And again, I'm going to Israel in a couple of weeks. Appreciate your prayers, everybody. I'll keep you updated on that. One last thing I got to say, David, is again, for everybody out there, I'll be in Wisconsin this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would love to meet you if you're in the new Richmond, Wisconsin area. I would love to meet you up there. So there. So you can check that out also at the hopeforourtimes.com website. So I know that's a lot, David. You had to sit through all of my commercials right there. But
no, I totally appreciate, and yeah, enjoy it. I mean, I do actually recommend.
Thank you very much. You are so kind. And check out David's Balagon connection too. So Gijón Springs plus Balagon connection. Make sure you go there. And we both appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and share, because it's the only way that we can get the word out. Believe me, we don't have favor from the tech giants that are out there. So it takes you guys who watch to be able to like, subscribe, and share. The more you do that, then the more it actually goes out there. So both of us appreciate it. Without you guys, we can't do this. David, a final thought from you?
Well, pray for us. I mean, again, I feel like I'm repeating, like I'm a broken record, but the next couple of days are going to be critical, and please go and vote.
Amen.
Please.
Amen. As I tell everybody, I'm definitely voting, and I'm voting against Kamala, just so everybody knows. Well, I look forward to talking to you. Maybe I'll be able to talk to you from Wisconsin too, because who knows what's going to happen in the next few days. So
whenever and wherever.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will be talking to you soon. Join me also today in Prophecy coming up tonight. God bless you, everybody.